In fiscal year 2024, the Library of Congress's budget was $852 million.
Even though collections in the future will be coming in even more digitally, we still will have needs for physical collections like closed stacks.
I call them comic books. She says graphic novels. Do you have a professional opinion?
They're both.
That's so political.
In 2021, the Library of Congress launched a minority-serving institution program to connect more deeply with Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, and other minority communities.
If you require that it be digitized to file with the Copyright Office, and then the Copyright Office immediately sends that to the Library of Congress without a licensing agreement, aren't you kind of putting yourself in the position of Napster?
Members of Congress are the only patrons that we have circulate materials to, and we keep records.
Would you
of
commit
how
to making
long.
that a public record of who owes money to the Library of Congress? And,
You don't owe money.
I don't.
We have appropriations, though.
Thank Dr. Hayden, the Librarian of Congress, for joining us today to discuss the work of the Library, the Library of Congress is doing. The Library of Congress is the third largest agency under the Committee of House Administration's jurisdiction and falls under the legislative branch. In fiscal year 2024, the Library of Congress's budget was $852 million. When VEMP began, it was estimated to cost $60 million total, with $20 million coming from donors and $40 million paid from American taxpayers. Is that accurate from 2019? Yes. And then as the costs have shifted, it's now set to cost $90 million, $70 million of which would be from taxpayers. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so just want to discuss the timeline, some of the challenges and noted with COVID and other things that have come up. Do you still anticipate VEMP being completed by 2027?
Definitely, and we have been really anxious to be able to work with the new architect of the Capitol to continue that progress that we've had, Thomas Austin. We're scheduled to make sure that we are able to make all of the deadlines, and so it's something that we're concerned about, but we think that we continue on the progress.
That's great. Do you think you have everything you need to be able to execute on the timeline that you have in front of you? I know we now have a new architect of Capitol that's been in that position for a handful of weeks, who's ramping up. Do you feel like you have what you need to be able to execute on this?
The library has what it needs. The design elements have been worked out with the architect of the Capitol. We're now in the phase that it really is part of the architect of the Capitol's domain, preparing spaces for fabrication of cases that the library is responsible for. So that's the work that's going to be done now.
What would be the building utilization rate then of the Madison and Adams building, say pre-COVID to today's environment with the utilization of telework?
The space utilization has been thoroughly examined as well, because we've had to make sure that we had spaces for staff members who are coming in at different times. And in the Madison building in particular, we are making sure that we have space for expansion of the collections. Even though collections in the future will be coming in even more digitally, we still will have needs for physical collections like closed stacks.
So you're seeing a transition from areas inside both the Madison and Adams building that was previously utilized by individuals working on premises into collections?
And in fact, we have relocated and saved a $1 million plan to have a separate building for the National Library for the Blind. We've relocated them into the Adams building, and that was a great savings, also savings on rent that we were paying.
Do you know how much will be saved over that? I was going to ask you a question on, and you brought it up. Do you know what the savings will be by that relocation?
Well, immediately, the plan for a $100 million estimate of a new facility, and even looking at renovating a space that had been designated. And then, of course, the rent, which was in the millions of dollars a year, and had been a rental space for NLS for 50 years.
Can you give an update on the search for a new permanent director and the qualities that are of particular interest as you work through that process?
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Robert Newland for serving as the interim director. He's here today, and he has had already a substantial and excellent career at the library and CRS for over 40 years, and so he's brought stability and progress to the service during this period, and has also been very helpful as we have a interview panel of experts to consider the candidates, and they're going to be making recommendations to me very shortly. And they have had a substantial number of people who are interested, and one of the main qualities, though, that I'm definitely committed to is that the new director will continue with the progress that's been made and provide that continued stability to advance CRS. So that will be one of the main
Very good.
parts that I need
Thank
to
you.
look at.
I was telling my wife, who spent 31 years as middle school English language arts teacher, that you're the largest comic book collection in the
Yes.
world. She said they're called graphic novels. So I want you to break the tie between my wife and I. I call them comic books. She says graphic novels. Do you have a professional opinion?
They're both.
That's so
Comics
political.
And graphic novels are thicker and
there's a way.
usually, and more
Very good.
modern.
All right, there you go.
Now, as the longest-serving member of this committee, I've seen some changes in that over the years. In fact, several years ago, we were having a hearing with the library regarding the strategic plan, and there was an effort then to change the mission statement to minimize the role of being the Library of Congress. And most recently, in many of the Library of Congress's branding, which emphasizes library in big bold letters with Congress in much smaller letters beneath it. So there's been a concern of a shift away from being the Library of Congress. So the question is the library still focused on its preeminent mission to serve Congress and to prioritize Congress among its customers? And if so, how are you carrying that out?
Well, thank you for that question, because we remain, and it's in our name, the Library of Congress. And by opening up more opportunities for the general public, Congress's constituents, to access some of the collections, we have not deviated from our primary mission to serve Congress. The emphasis on the Congressional Research Service shows that. They are still the research and reference arm for Congress, and we have extended what services that we can provide for Congress. So that is still in our mission. We have not deviated from it, and we won't.
The report found that Inspector General Hyde's relationship with a senior employee wrongfully created the appearance that the independence of Inspector General Hyde and his office was compromised. According to their report, the IG compromised the independence of his office. Are you familiar with that investigation and the findings of CG?
I am familiar and received notice. The library received notice in, I believe it was January of 2023. That's when we first received any indication about the investigation itself, that the issue had been closed. And also in that intervening time, Mr. Hyde had left the library in 2020. Right. And so that's the only notification that we got from
And the reason I'm bringing this up is a whistleblower had alleged many of the findings that were highlighted in this report. But the whistleblower was fired by the Library of Congress. Now, that whistleblower came to my office several years ago with these types of allegations. We looked into it, didn't find really anything credible at the time, but now that this report has come out, this report is alleging the same things that this whistleblower alleged that led to their termination. real simply, we're running out of time here. Is the Library of Congress willing to reopen their review of the conduct toward that particular whistleblower? Now with this new revelation that there may have been truth to the allegations.
I would need to work with you on getting information about the particular whistleblower.
Okay.
And also work with the current acting Inspector General at the library.
Okay.
So I definitely want to follow up with you on that.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I'll
look
make
into the
sure our
matter.
staff gets with your staff, too. So we
That
just
would
want to
be
make sure
helpful.
that this gets covered. So, thank you, Dr. Hayden.
In 2021, the Library of Congress launched a minority serving institution program to connect more deeply with Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, and other minority communities by expanding its collection using technology to enable storytelling and offering more internships and fellowship opportunities. This initiative has helped a number of my constituents in HBCUs in the state of Alabama, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Can you provide an update on how this program might be impacting communities across this nation?
Thank you. The Library of Congress received one of its largest philanthropic gifts from the Andrew Mellon Foundation to develop a multi-pronged approach to having paid internships for students to mine the library's collections, discover new ways to use the library's collections, as well as to give many grants to communities for their local histories and creating things using digital methods. And we're in the third year. We've got an extension on the program, and it has developed into a program that's proof of concept for other foundations that are interested in making sure that students have an opportunity to learn how to do research, basically, and to create their own histories and in communities. So we are very pleased that the opportunity from Mellon provided us with a way to look into how we can integrate what we've learned from those programs into our regular operations.
The Copyright Office has a notice of proposed rulemaking out there, and it strongly encourages folks to submit digitized copies of their works to the Copyright Office. Some would even argue that it essentially requires that you digitize your work to send it in, at least to get it in a timely manner processed for copyright. And here's the dilemma that, and I wasn't very articulate at that time, and I may not be this time, but here's the concern that's been raised. If you require that it be digitized to file with the Copyright Office, and then the Copyright Office immediately sends that to the Library of Congress without a licensing agreement, aren't you kind of putting yourself in the position of Napster, where now you all have it, that's available to the public in essence, and yet there's no licensing agreement? That's the concern, is that they're being required, or at least strongly encouraged, to submit a digitized copy to copyright, and then they're actually bypassing the copyright because they send it to y'all in that digitized form without a licensing agreement.
The Library of Congress uses digitized content in a very responsible manner and fair use, and so it would not make available.
Not accusing. What I'm saying is that I think that there's a glitch in the process that may be setting up a system where it may accidentally get abused. That's the concern that I've heard, and I raised that to your attention. I'm not sure that Ms. Perlmutter was fully understanding it. Ms. Bice and I both had questions on it. I just ask you to go back and take a look at it, because that's what Library of Congress has always been great on that. Not fussing about it, just worried that we might be creating a system where we accidentally bypass the copyright by forcing the digitization, which is then immediately sent to the Library of Congress.
Thank you for bringing that up at this point, because as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we are working very diligently with the Copyright Office on their continuous development of their registration system. That's the hardest part of what they've been doing in terms of modernizing. And so to bring up different issues and concerns at this point is very timely. We have a public stakeholder group. They've been bringing up a lot of things too, so thank you for this.
Well, take a look at it. I appreciate that. Now I'm going to switch over to another. I love real books. There's nothing better than sitting in a chair, particularly if you can get a fire going and reading a real book. But what I find in my job, and there are lots of other people in similar types of jobs, is that I very rarely get that chance. And so what I do is I'm often doing audiobooks. And through Libby, I'm able to get a lot of books. What I have found, though, is that my Roanoke Valley Library's Libby has more offerings, at least that I'm looking for, than the Library of Congress. It looks like you want to address that, and I want you to address that.
Your public library probably
Yep.
has more of the current fiction or mysteries and things like that.
Well, I find
for
it to be
circulation.
true. I find it to be true also with older books. So I thought it was interesting because we were sitting here having this chat. So I quickly looked up Frederick Douglass, and there's a couple of ebooks that I found on Libby, but no audiobooks. Although there was one that said you have this process. For those who don't know it, you can tag it, and I want to compliment the Library of Congress on that in just a second. But so I tagged the Frederick Douglass. Narratives of the Life of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass, because I'd love to listen to that. And it's a fairly short listen, 4 hours. That's
It's
halfway across my district. I'll be done before I can get to the other side. But things like The Last Line, Manchester's book on Winston Churchill, is not available either place. So it's not just I get it. When I'm looking for some fluff, I expect my local library to have it. But when I'm looking for deeper things, I might want to see some more from the Library of Congress. Just wondering what y'all's plans are on that. I know it's new and I know it's a small market, but what are y'all's plans on that, on
Well,
increasing your audiobooks?
This is also timely as well because, as you know, and people have even asked, if I'm listening to a book, am I reading? Yes, you are. Right? And so as we expand and provide that service as well, beyond basic research and history and things for members of Congress, we'll be cognizant of looking at what the requests are.
How many books are overdue? And
Members of
specifically, how many?
Congress are the only people
What's
who
that?
can, members of Congress are the only patrons that we have
Okay.
circulate materials to, and we keep records
Would you
of
commit
how
to making
long.
that a public record of who owes money to the Library of Congress? And,
You
I
don't
think-
owe money.
I don't.
We have appropriations, though.
I just think it would be a good revenue thing, so, but
Well-
anyway, in all seriousness, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the Veterans History Project.
Oh, yes.
It's, I'm blessed to have almost 1 out of 10 of my constituents as a veteran, and we've been very active in seeking out stories with so much of our military community, Camp Lejeune and New River Air Station, Cherry Point. We've had 3 very successful events, collected over 30 oral histories, 900 minutes of stories. And I just wanted to know, can you give an update or a progress report about, we have so much, I think we're just touching the surface on this. We have so much more work to do.
We have approximately 117,000 collections, and we've migrated the legacy database to a more modern form, and we are really looking at having a more robust website and making it easier for veterans and their families to record and submit their oral histories. And so that's a major initiative that we are working on. So we want to do more with members of Congress in terms of the workshops. We have staff that will come into districts and do that.
So so our district has a quarter of them, essentially. That's of the
Right.
ones that have been collected.
And we
so-
definitely, and there's certain engagements that we are very interested in more recent engagements, veterans, and of course, the Vietnam era is one that's a
If I
little
may
difficult.
make one suggestion, I do think we need to decrease the bureaucracy of it a little bit. It's a little bit onerous. I actually tried to do it for my own family, and it made it much too hard. So I do think we need to cut that probably in half. We need more stories. We don't necessarily need
Yes.
100% of the details.
Can you kind of speak of the necessity of these field offices to carry out the Library of Congress's mission?
And the term office really captures what these operations are. They are offices that are led by a Library of Congress head person, and also nationals from the area who are responsible for acquiring materials from different parts of the world. The Library of Congress collects in 470 languages. And so the people in the field office acquire materials in different languages, and the Library of Congress also is the coordinator and administrator for over 120 other educational institutions in the United States who pay for that service. So we're collecting not only for the Library of Congress, but for other colleges and universities and research centers in the United States.
In January of this year, the Library of Congress restricted the use of generative AI tools to use only within authorized pilot programs. As of today, how many pilots have been authorized at the Library of Congress that incorporate the use of AI tools?
And I'm very pleased that you noted that we are assessing and making sure that we are not on the cutting edge of AI, and we have a number of use cases. So in each of the service units, there are experiments and pilots that we're looking at. For instance, CRS is looking at how AI could be used. So I would say, and I'd have to get back to you on the exact number of the use cases, but they are limited, they are controlled, and we are very concerned that there is governance of anything that happens with AI so we can maintain the quality of service and that we provide currently.
Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.